Good morning and assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. I kindly request you to rise for the national anthem of Pakistan. I now request your attention to the recitation of the Holy Quran.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Center for Aerospace and Security Studies Islamabad is hosting a book launch for the edited volume Non-Fungible Tokens, Multidisciplinary Perspectives. The editor of the volume, Dr. Usman Chauhan, serves as an advisor to President Kass on economic affairs and national development. This is his seventh successfully completed book project in the past 6 years. The book serves as an additional milestone in the larger program of Dr. Chauhan's examination of the potential of digital economy. Spanning the work of 14 authors from 10 countries and 8 academic disciplines, the edited volume serves as the definitive multidisciplinary account of non-fungible tokens and shall have a lasting impact on the study of blockchain technology, an important but often overlooked element of the digital economy. Despite their comparatively short history, a substantial research interest had emerged over the past 4 years on non-fungible tokens, with Dr. Chauhan's work being among the most cited on the subject in the world. CAS is proud to celebrate the successful completion of this book project and to share key findings from the book. As the book's editor, Dr. Chauhan will be discussing the main theme behind the book, its conceptualization, overview, and findings, while other contributors to the volume will be sharing their commentaries to enrich the launch event as well. I'd now like to invite Dr. Usman on the stage for his presentation. Please, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to thank those who have joined from XCAS, for example. I particularly want to mention Sir Wasim, thank you for coming. Sir Ashfaq, thank you for coming. Sir Asghar, thank you for coming. And thank you to everybody at CAS that we are sharing in a common spirit of celebration about this book. It is titled Non-Fungible Tokens, which is something that perhaps young people have heard of below the age of 30 as NFTs. But it isn't commonly known, but it's something worth talking, and I'd like to share with you what it is. So, in the digital economy, one big thing that has taken a lot of attention is blockchain. Blockchain कह के तो हमने बहुत ही बड़ा एक वो बना दिया है. But in fact, there are many smaller variants, interesting technologies inside blockchain. One such technology is non-fungible tokens, and I'll explain how it works. For those of you who were there for the launch of Book 5, that was also a study of the digital economy, a kind of YOLO capitalism. And inshallah, Book 8 is another variant of blockchain called the Decentralized Autonomous Organization. We will launch that, inshallah, near the end of the year. The style that I have adopted is common among all of these. The style is that you take a topic, you get a variety of people, from very young but promising scholars to very senior people in the field. You put them all together and you cover all possible important angles of the subject. That means it's not purely economics. First of all, economics is not sufficient to understand big questions. So you should get somebody with a legal angle, a sociology angle, a history angle, an IT, matlab technology angle, and put them all together in a synthesis. And the best way to do that is you start with the beginnings of the technology, if it's a very technical thing like this. Then you take some chapters which look at the good stuff, the good possibilities of what is available, and then what are the dangers, the pitfalls, and the risks. Because with something like blockchain, it is a double-edged sword. I'm not there to promote a technology like this or to demote it, but to understand it more deeply. So I want a diversity of perspectives in terms of their age, seniority, their disciplines, etc. And I don't want to give a verdict in the book. You as the reader will give the verdict that you are for it or against it. But you should be thorough in the study. So this is 80,000 words. Typically a book that I alone would write would be 60,000 words. And you have to be creative about it. So why this topic, non-fungible tokens? This is a glance of my Google Scholar profile from 2 weeks ago. And of all the things that I have ever worked on, the one that is most highly cited was a rough sketch of a paper written in 2021 on this subject, where I compiled my thoughts prognosticating what this might be as a technology. And it became extremely popular in terms of downloads and in terms of citations. मतलब इतनी सारी चीजों पे काम किया CAS के अंदर, लेकिन ये वो वाहिद मौजू है जिस पे. So then I thought, well, we should do a little bit more on this and understand it, but not alone. Then you have to get. मैं खुद परेशान था because it was not a very good paper. It was very rough. So it deserves something better in this form. As a paper itself, it's already had 22,000 people. This is a boring paper. It's not a YouTube video. It's not a dance video. It's serious stuff. और इतना ज़्यादा. How can it be? Shughli tha actually the paper. It's a shughli paper, but it caught on. It caught on because there's some elements to it. First of all, NFTs were very lucrative. At the height of the market, which was 2021, 2022, it was about $38 billion of market value. So what are Pakistan's exports? It's also in that order of magnitude, right? This our national exports worth of is the market capitalization of NFTs. Ab thoda kam ho gaya, ab it will be like 26 billion. Because the global economy right now has veered towards less risky asset categories. Bonds mein zyada paisa chala gaya. And there's so much uncertainty in the world today as opposed to around 2021. I will talk about that in detail, but aap yaad karen jab COVID tha, there was so much stimulus pumped in. People got extra money. Corporations got extra money. There was only so much you would want to put into real estate, vaghaira. So other categories of assets ballooned. That was contracted when interest rates were raised around the world. That's a big factor I will discuss. But there was a time where a bubble was created on this. Point being that it was very lucrative at the time. Anyways, which helps to explain why so many people wanted to understand what is this to start with. So you have Bitcoin. You've heard the term Bitcoin. every unit of Bitcoin is the same. And they all use a technology called blockchain to build the code, which is then called a coin. Each one is the same. What if you had each coin, each unit, each compilation of code different from the others? This is the question of fungibility, which is why the term comes, non-fungible tokens. For example, if I have one 5,000 rupee note, orange, and I have 5 1,000 rupee notes, they are fungible. Yes. So you will accept my 5 1,000 rupee notes, or you will accept my 1 5,000 rupee note. You don't care. But when things become non-fungible, that means it's a unique asset. You cannot simply trade it for its equivalent. If I borrow Sir Ashfaq's car and Khuda na khasta, I crash it, I cannot take Sir Farooq's car and give it to Sir Ashfaq. They're not fungible. That is Sir Farooq's car and this is Sir Ashfaq's car. They're not the same. They're not fungible. This is the concept. The same applies to code, computer code, where you can put markers in each unit so that they are not one and the same. And that has implications. That has very serious implications, where if I own a particular compilation of code, I can treat it the way you would treat a unique baseball card, a unique painting, a unique object. So that is revolutionary in principle, because वैसे तो all of digital stuff is ones and zeros, basically. But that's all it is. But what if you could shape it so that each composition can be uniquely yours, the way your house is uniquely yours, or your car is uniquely yours? Ye meri Honda hai. Can you apply that to code? In principle, you can. So that was revolutionary, because suddenly things that you thought couldn't work online. For example, Hira is our graphic designer. She does the art. I can simply copy paste it and say, ab maine kar diya hai. But with NFTs, it will mark it that ye Hira ki cheez hai. So I can't pretend to be the graphic designer for it. That concept is revolutionary with ones and zeros. With physical objects, I own this book, it's mine, unless you steal it from me. Achha, but with online stuff, there was no such concept. So the concept of owning unique things online is the breakthrough. Now, there is a process by which these things are created, which we don't need to get into because it is dull. But you can imagine that you have all these quirky things like artistic endeavors that pop up. By the way, this one was generated by me through AI. It's the cover of one of the op-eds. So if you have this concept where a compilation of code or a collection that you've put together is uniquely yours, that has economic implications. This is mine. I can price it higher than just generic code. Similarly, there are social elements because we can build communities where we trade this stuff. Marketplaces can emerge that have unique value. And there are technological breakthroughs. So there's 3 layers that I at least had to cover in the book. You're talking about a new form of money. The way you use art, auctions of art as money. You collect them, but it's virtual. Similarly, you have community building. And these are quite vibrant places online, the marketplaces. Twitter pe, a big chunk of it is this stuff. Just talking about NFTs, minting them, trading them. And finally, the technological aspect. Okay. मैंने आपसे गुजारिश की थी कि I like to structure it in terms of explaining what it is and not just taking on the burden of explaining it myself. I want to get other experts' perspectives. We go through the basics, that is chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we go into the positive elements. How can we create a society of producers? The next stage of capitalism. Thodi gehri soch ke saath. Somebody wrote on that. Then the environmental, social, and governance elements of this. As you may have heard, Bitcoin is very bad for the environment. The amount of electricity used to create this stuff is horrific. Just to process the mathematical puzzles in competition with other people to win a Bitcoin, it is a very inefficient thing. So can somebody talk about that? If we improve that, would that create value? Yes. Then there is Web 3.0, another area of value. So we live in the era of Web 2.0 still. I will explain in detail later. And somebody has a video for us on this, the contributor. But in the most simplest terms, if you remember the 90s and you started to use the internet, It was Web 1.0. You did not create things on it. You just went on the website. जो बना बनाया होता था, you could read it. So you were not the owner of that. You were not the producer of that. You simply went online and consumed. But in Web 2.0, our zamana is the social media zamana. So we are producers and consumers today because I write a post and that has value. For example, it has value for the owner, Twitter. They use their algorithm to aggregate data. So I'm also a producer at the same time that I consume things on Twitter or Facebook. Web 3.0 is the revolution that will happen in time, where you are not just the producer and the consumer, but you are also the owner of this stuff. Right now, you are not the owner. Twitter owns it. Facebook owns it. Meta owns it. Amazon owns it. This is the missing thing. Sir Zahid, aapse is pe baat ho rahi thi. This is the Web 3.0 fun stuff. And finally, can you have a new form of community based around this? These are some interesting elements of the value, not just beyond just trading. But then we go into the dark side of things. There's a lot of hacks and scams and rug pulls. A rug pull is that you pull the rug from under people. So you issue this thing, badi zabardast cheez banai, come and buy this. People buy it. They give you the money. Before you actually finish the project, you take the money and run. Pull the rug. Ye hota hai in NFTs. Then there is what one of our dear authors called the semantic décalage. This means that they say NFTs can be so wonderful. I've already given you some inkling of that with the tone, the hopeful tone. But what it can actually do is limited. So iski bahut phoompa ho chuki hai, but what it can actually do, there is a gap between that. He is a linguist. He studied, explained it in semiotics. Then there's a portion of exploitation. I'll save that. Mere khayal se ye behtareen chapter tha iska. So we'll skip that for now. And then there's the spectacle of accumulation. So you go on this virtual community and you see people are just going about doing this stuff the way ants are working in their colony, just going about doing business as a spectacle for the sake of it. In order to have such a comprehensive work, you need to have a deep structure behind it. And this is the responsibility of a good editor of a volume. So you have the fundamentals, but then you have the value part and the disvalue part. This is a reflection essentially of this, but with more detail, and the authors' names. And you will see that they're quite diverse. In addition, we have many different disciplines: computer science, history, economics, sociology, accounting, criminology, linguistics, media studies, political economy. It is not just one thing. That adds an extra burden on the editor that you have to be versed enough with what they're saying. And I always have one math-heavy chapter. Math-heavy. In book 8, there will be one with a lot of mathematical proofs. Then I also have to be ready mathematically to deal with what this person has said. Galat cheez dal di, unki bhi embarrassment, meri bhi. So this is where it becomes tough, that you have to be familiar enough with other literatures to manage it and put it coherently together. That's what it ends up looking like. What I insist upon is you cannot have this as an American discourse or a European discourse. Everybody in the digital economy should be involved in the dialogue. Pakistan se bhi log hain, South Africa se bhi log hain, Ireland, Spain, France, Finland, Italy, Canada, China, United States. That's when you start to get good conversations going. There should not be inherent barriers based on nationality or your ethnic provenance to hold you back from exploring technology. This is also something I am very keen on. It enriches the debate. So chapter 1, now we will go step by step. I wanted to point out what is my vision, my editorial vision behind this, which I've shared with you already. Chapter 2, there's a professor from Karachi, and she is very, very deeply involved in the blockchain and computer science stuff. I asked her, start from the basics, from blockchain as if a person didn't know anything, and get to the final stage of the NFTs. And she did a good job explaining it. So if you want to hit the ground running in this book, you do this. But if you know blockchain, you can skip this entirely and go to chapter 3. I did this myself. A thematic history. There are larger forces that explain why this phenomena came to be. ये ऐवी नहीं होता. COVID का मैंने जिक्र किया आपसे. There's so much stimulus money. लोग घर पे बैठे हुए हैं. There's nothing to do. You cannot spend it. That's when you have these kinds of interesting explorations. Many people got involved in this stuff. There was a statistic that about 10 to 20% of Americans owned crypto at this time because they were just checking online, kya kuch hai karne ko, zyada kuch nahi tha. This stuff then kicks off. Then there is an interesting concept called FOMO. Young people will understand this. The fear of missing out. If you're on Twitter, locked in your house because it's a lockdown, and other people are into stuff and you see inka charcha chal raha hai online, you feel that you will miss out if you don't do this. There's a lot of peer pressure involved. So a lot of people, without really knowing the stuff, jumped in. This is what's called the dumb money on Wall Street. Because all my friends are doing it, if I don't do it, I feel like a loser, so I'll do it. That's a very suicidal way to invest anyways, but it happened. And the third thing is the ludic economy. Ludic as in undirected playfulness. Shughal mela. The ludic element. Of all the variants of blockchain, this is the most fun one because it has an artistic and creative element. Artists got into this particularly. But other parts of the blockchain universe tend to be very serious or dull or dry. But the playfulness of NFTs increased their appeal, particularly for non-experts on the mathematical side. It is easy to get into this because it is fun, because the collectibles created are interesting. And then there's one other element of the history of this. Ab history mein aise keh raha hu jaise ye koi porous ke haathiyon pe baith ke NFT. No, it's only a 3-year, 4-year history, but that's the fun part of it, that you can condense so much happening in just 4 years. There were actually crypto empires built. Empires, for example, there was this exchange, online exchange called FTX. And FTX was taking assets from everybody, money and crypto and all this, and it was a big sham. And it was worth about $20 billion, the exchange itself. It was all a fraud. And they were using it for their personal expenses, and there was no oversight. And they had bought out a lot of the mainstream media. So the New York Times had written a favorable profile of the owner, etc., etc. When it all began to unravel, when the Justice Department got involved, it became a big drama. And so a lot of people panicked. And one of the first and largest things to get hit from that panic was this shughli area, because there's no shughal mela when things are falling apart. These are 4 elements you have to understand about NFTs. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. It happens in the social context. And our social context over this last decade, the 2020s, which is now almost halfway done, has been a very miserable decade, a very volatile and turbulent decade. And these are examples of how we have experienced that turbulence in the virtual world. I have a video of chapter 4 done by Dr. Hong Bao, who did the math, and he will explain what he did. But basically the concept was NFTs are not unique in the sense of an asset class. They're part of a family of assets, of blockchain, of cryptocurrency. So why don't you regress the returns over the past X period and how they correlate? What is the relationship between NFTs and blockchain, NFTs and Ethereum, NFTs and other NFTs? All of that math is done. He can talk about that in detail. Now we get to the value side. The idea was that capitalism, there's the owners of capital and the workers. Then we went into a consumption society, at least mid-stage capitalism. So 1950 was we're going about consuming for the hell of consuming. Then there's a stage after that, which is the society of producers. We have gone way past Marxism, way off course, I mean to say. And we're producing for the hell of producing. And what are we producing? Virtual cartoons. We have really gone off the path of what we needed to achieve as a society. And so Alesha, Sirada, they talk about this in the concept of where we stand in capitalism. Ultimately, the goal was that we would be having fun with life and producing for what we want to. Where do NFTs symbolize that and how they fail to? That is the deep thinking there. ESG ka maine bata diya hai. There's an environmental part, governance part, and a social part. If you can improve these elements, you're already creating value. Web3 का मैंने आपको पस मंजर दिया है, but that has an impact on NFTs. So Nyane Mofokeng and Tapeli Matema say that NFTs will also look different when you are the owner of your digital information. You will come to a time where you will have dynamic NFTs. That means that when you have this thing online, you can actually change its parameters. You own them and you change them. Aajkal to they're static, which is boring. That has limitations. But as the internet improves, NFTs will improve. There's a very strong case for that as we come to that. Aajkal, we are still at this stage. Ethereum. We have to get to this stage. That's what they're interested in. And recall, many of us have lived through this evolution as a whole. Paul Dillon Ennis in chapter 8 does fascinating work. He actually gets in, there's an anthropology approach. He gets into the market and deals with this stuff to understand how people interact, what they do, how they do it. And he comes to certain conclusions that this community is actually different from other forms of Bitcoin communities. They behave differently, they think differently, their politics is different, their economic incentives are different, and their concepts of enjoyment are also different. These aren't bettors or speculators per se. Some of them are just having cartoonish fun. So you're having different mindsets evolve within a virtual universe. That mindset element is covered very powerfully in his chapter. This was mine because I couldn't find any person who could capture all of the dangers. But there's a lot of nonsense, a lot of false salesmanship. If you remember The Wolf of Wall Street, sell me this pen, it's an NFT, sold. There's a lot of that goli mastery. And also the limitations of the mainstream economy and the scam artistry means that when my parents were 30, they could get their first house. And when my generation is 30, we can own a digital salmon. That's where we are at economically. It's not the same deal that we're getting. And there's also a lot of this goli mastery in terms of NFTs being, one has the dadi, one has the hair, one has the munche, one has, there are chote changes karke. There's a lot of this pool patiya element to it. So I captured all of these and said there's a lot of this nonsense. Now it's our job to parse through and pick the wheat from the chaff. So I took that responsibility. One of my favorite chapters was, and I have a video for it too, is by a dear friend of mine, Carlos Yabra Lopez. He and I are working on book 9 together. And he looks at it and says that instead of what the community on Twitter tells you that is possible, this is actually what's possible. There is a big gap between this, a décalage. So it is not you in control of the Pokemon, it is the Pokemon in control of you, that you have fallen to false illusions. And the linguistics perspective on it is that this is the sign, this is the signifier, there's a gap between them, that is a source of disvalue. It's very interesting to bring people from linguistics to cover economics and vice versa. Now, ye mera pasandida chapter hai. Trevor Zaucha, a young scholar from the US, he looks at this and says, Marxism. The NFTs, he takes the case of Axie Infinity. It's a kind of NFT video game. It's like Pokemon. And it's quite popular. I'm talking billions of dollars, so you may think it's just a cartoonish thing, but there's a lot of money involved. The units in this game are called Axies, the Pokemons. The Axies are often owned by people in Europe and America. But to level up your Axie, that means it's more powerful, it has a higher level, therefore it has a higher value, you can sell it. The people who are leveling it up are usually from the Philippines. Young people sitting in front of their radio or whatever, or phone pe wo lage hue doing combat, which is to say one Axie versus another to win, to make it more valuable. It is one. Wo laga hua in the Philippines. It's factory labor. It's factory labor, but in the digital sphere. So when you have all this shughal mela, colorful stuff, deep down, it is those young whites who own it and those young coloreds who are working it. That is real stuff. So I think that's a very serious contribution to this, to look at this stuff from this angle. Finally, Timke and Renz look at the spectacle of accumulation. If you look at the serious business now, not the trading, not the speculation, not the community of artists, but you look at what an NFT could mean in terms of unique ownership, you would basically have functions like a notary function that I can have attestation that I own this asset. That's the technology part. Even there are limitations. And so they start from this, even at the most fundamental, non-ludic promise, there are limitations. And if you look at it from that, people are still going about trading this stuff. I tell you, after we have seen all of this stuff go up and down, all of this erosion, all of this volatility, still $26 billion in sales, not capitalization, but sales now. After we know everything, there's still that much money in this. Why? Because it's all a big spectacle. What are young people to do these days? Should they go and join some radical element? Should they go out on the streets? No, let them just sit home and just enjoy this silly spectacle. That is what we can offer them. That's the tragedy of late stage capitalism. It's all just a spectacle. आप बैठे में फोन पे और अपने जैसों के साथ बस ये bongiयां मार रहे हैं. That's what they're, if I can distill it to a word, it's all one big sham. That's the disvalue part. My ambition was to begin from the idea that, wow, there are a lot of people interested in this one paper I did. This one, it wasn't even the best one. To then have, well, let's look at it a little bit more deeply. And if anybody has any interest in this, and they certainly do, then this has to be the definitive volume on the subject. Because it's not just economics, it's not just society, it's not just technology. It is the sum total of perspectives that we can conceive of on this subject. And therefore, it will have a lasting power. It's gratifying for me that NFTs have not entirely withered away, and that Bitcoin and other blockchain elements do still have a deep interest. That is because the promise of new technologies still exists. And that is also because mainstream capitalism doesn't offer the solutions to the problems. That Wall Street still doesn't offer the things that it promised it would. So as long as mainstream capitalism is so terrible and our global society is so fractured, people will still seek the opium of colorful things online. So it's partly that this isn't as bad as its skeptics say, but the world itself isn't also as good as people hope. That creates this room for these technologies to still have relevance. And I hope that new iterations, some scholars pointed to the new possibilities, they materialize, and then people will look back at this book and say, ah, so they had foreseen that this was possible. And then the citations will continue. So this is from me. Brief talk about this book. Now Zara is coming and she will play 4 videos. The videos, I'll just give the cover while she joins us. Hongbao is going to talk about the mathematics. Alessia is going to talk about the Society of Producers. Mofokeng and Matima are going to talk about Web 3.0. And finally, Carlos is going to talk about the semiotic issues. We have their videos, so they are joining us in spirit today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we shall see a recorded message by one of the esteemed authors of the book, Dr. Hong Bao. Dr. Hong Bao is an Associate Research Fellow of the Institute for International Affairs at the Chinese University Shenzhen. He received his PhD in finance from the School of Finance, Central University of Finance and Economics. Prior to that, he worked at the Institute of International Technology and Economy, Development Research Center of the State Council. His research interests include digital currencies, financial contagion, and financial risks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Bao Hong from Chinese University of Hong Kong, Shenzhen, China. Thanks to Professor Usman. Without his organization and help, I couldn't have been involved in this book. Also, it was an honor to work with so many experts in this field and Professor David Huber and I worked together on the chapter about the NFT market. Now I'm delighted to introduce our work and perspective. To summarize, our chapter is an analysis of the NFT market based on transaction data, which mainly includes the current state of development, important features, and the relationship with mainstream cryptocurrency. We begin describing the evolution of the NFT market and its overall situation through 6 indicators like sales, unique sellers, unique buyers, and supply, and so on. We find that the NFT market has experienced a very rapid upturn and a gradual downturn. Although the supply of NFT is still increasing at the trading level, there is obviously excess of supply over demand, or we can say a contraction of demand. Then our research has included 2 major aspects. First, we analyze the basic features of NFT market by selecting 5 NFT tokens like Decentraland, Axie Infinity, Certain Network, Sandbox, and Engine Coin. We describe the evolution and the characteristics of these 5 NFT tokens and the markets through a series of statistical indicator and studies. That's a basic way to review the market situation. Second, we examine the spillover effects, or we can see the dynamic relationship between the 5 NFT tokens and mainstream cryptocurrencies, including Bitcoin, as well as Ethereum and Solana. The last 2 kinds of tokens issue the most NFTs. And we also use the DCC GAT model. The results show unquestionably that the commitment between the NFT market and mainstream cryptocurrency is so strong that the NFT market doesn't show enough uniqueness. For my view on NFT today, so to be honest, from now on, I still think NFT has a great potential in this evolving digital world. But the truth is, maybe it's because it's borrowed from cryptocurrencies. This makes the NFT market just as full of speculators as the crypto asset market. And there are also many valid NFT trading markets, which erode the trust behind the blockchain. So if the NFT wants to get better, it has to get out of the parts of the fungible token market. I think only a network that can accommodate more nodes and participants can increase and reduce transaction costs. For our book, it's clear that NFT is more than just a protocol, just like blockchain technology itself. It can be applied in many areas and change everything, I think. And that's what book is trying to show you. With each expert of our team provide their understanding from a specific perspective, and when you read them all together, you will come away with a much different and deeper understanding of NFT, rather than just one side, just one perspective.
Now we'll hear a brief insight from another esteemed author, Dr. Alicia Sarada. Dr. Alicia Sarada is a researcher and doctoral candidate at the University of Vasa, Finland. Her areas of research interest include blockchains, the ludic economy, and virtual games. Her publication record extends across the areas of game studies, blockchain studies, weird and horror media, and post Soviet visual culture.
Hello, my name is Alicia Serrada. Currently, I'm a PhD candidate at the University of Vasa, Finland. I've just finished my dissertation on the topic of the value of NFTs in games, on the example of the longest running crypto game, CryptoKitties. My chapter is dedicated to the new process of value creation that I can see happening right now, although I'm not quite sure if that is the future, because it is definitely not the future that we asked for when we were discussing the processes of value creation on blockchain with the assistance of NFTs. So if we look back into more traditional sociology of a modern society, we could see how capitalism first created the society of consumers. That is, an economy isn't possible without consumers. Value is not just created by producing goods and services. It is created when other consumers buy these products or pay for these services. And when this labor of producing goods and services becomes digitalized, the perspective shifts from consuming to producing, even for the agents who used to be pure consumers. For instance, the fans of television shows create their own narratives, and then a television show might use these narratives in the future TV series. They already know that this is what their fans want, so they take the stories written by their fans and incorporate parts of them into their TV series, which means that the consumers of a TV series do the work of consuming, but also the work of producing a new narrative. So with NFTs, we kind of expected that this labor, fan labor, and the labor of unprofessional creators would also be rewarded. What we see is the exact opposite. NFTs are used to extract value from fans in new and even more cunning ways. This is why I supposed to look at this process as going back to the society of producers. It's prosuming, consuming, and producing, but in such a circular dynamic that just closes on itself. So NFTs are bought by the same people who believe that they can make money by producing NFTs, more or less. So this community is very much circular, and it became even more insular with time. So based on that, do I believe in NFTs? Do I believe in the future of NFTs? I need the data. I don't have faith. I mean, of course I have faith in humanity, but I want to see the data. With CryptoKitties, I could see that the people who benefited from the game were the same people who would benefit from stock trading, from automated stock trading, and also the investors who could just invest more. So with this essay, I'm asking rather than answering the question, what are the new forms of value creation on blockchain with NFTs? And it may be that this economy just closes on itself, or it may be that consumers become producers, producers become consumers, and the only entity who benefits from that, who is able to extract value from these relationships, is the platform itself. Because unfortunately, most games on blockchain, they kind of they have their own platforms now, or they use blockchain platforms that make it easier for them to own them or to extract value from them. So it is not decentralized in any meaningful way. Speaking of the book, I'm very, very excited because when I started my work on NFTs, nobody would even ask such questions. How the value is being constructed? How is this value produced? And now we have this book and many amazing, brilliant minds who contributed to the problem of value on NFTs. And now we can have at least some kind of a picture. And this picture is very different from our expectations. For this reason, I'm very, very much looking forward to this book. And I'm very happy to have done my little contribution to it.
Now we shall watch a brief commentary by the esteemed authors Dr. Thapeli Matima and Dr. Nayan Mofokeng. Dr. Thapeli is a cybersecurity specialist with over a decade of experience in governance, risk and compliance, penetration testing, and security research. He also does iOS development and has interests and involvement in blockchain technology, from writing on various aspects of blockchains to finding vulnerabilities therein. Dr. Nayan is a lecturer in the Department of Applied Management at the Durban University of Technology, where he has been lecturing for numerous years. He has research interests in the fields of blockchain technology, local economic development, tourism, and conservation.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Nyande Mofokeng, commonly known as Mac, and I come from Durban, South Africa.
Hi, I'm Thapeli Matima, commonly known as TK. I'm from London, United Kingdom, and I'm a cybersecurity expert.
I am a lecturer at the Durban University of Technology, and our contribution to this book chapter is on chapter 7, titled A Look Beyond Static NFTs.
The chapter primarily focused on the evolution of non-fungible tokens from the current static to the more feature-rich and dynamic NFT standards. We focused on core elements and attributes of the NFT standards, which could form part of the core infrastructure of the metaverse and of their use in the content generation, verification, and potential distribution for artificial intelligence and large language models.
The broader view of the NFTs today is that they are largely speculative. However, we believe that NFTs will form the bedrock of the digital infrastructure required for the metaverse. Since the writing of the book, our view has largely remained unchanged. In fact, we have been reinforced in our belief that NFTs are going to form the core infrastructure of the digital network. One perfect example of this is user-generated content, which is today very prominent. However, it is largely at risk due to deepfake AI. We personally believe that future generations will want to make a living out of their own generated content. However, that content needs to be verifiable as well as attested. And this is one of the properties that NFTs and future standards will allow for future generations to be able to secure their income.
Given the diverse views and opinions of the authors in this book, we believe it could be one of the seminal books on non-fungible tokens that looks at the past, present, and potential future use cases of this technology.
We look forward to you guys reading the book and enjoying all of those contributions.
Finally, we shall see a recorded message by the esteemed author, Dr. Carlos Riebra Lopez. Dr. Carlos is a postdoctoral fellow at the University College London and a language instructor at Oxford University. His research focuses on critical social linguistics, particularly at the intersection between language and ideology, digital linguistics, and multilingualism. He received his PhD from New York University.
Hi, my name is Dr. Carlos Yebra Lopez, and I'm here to summarize my contribution to this volume. My chapter is chapter number 10, entitled The Fetishization Language Behind the NFT Craze, a Semiotic cum Semantic Critique. And in this chapter, I'm particularly interested in the speculative nature of NFTs and how to analyze that from the perspectives of critical linguistics, propaganda studies, for the most part, and also cultural studies to a lesser extent. And in particular, I'm concerned with the fact that the idea that purely virtual objects can be worth millions of dollars was reflected in and aided by the conceptualization of NFTs as digital assets. Now, that conceptualization was successful during the NFT bubble between 2020 and 2022 because it had behind a media campaign that engaged in both a semiotic and a semantic ruse. Now, what is the semiotic ruse? Semiotics, as you may know, is the study of science. And what is representation? Representation is the link between the signifier and the signified. In postmodern terms, we have a crisis of representation whereby the signifier is progressively detached from the signified. The way we represent things and the importance we ascribe to that representation takes prevalence over what those things really are, rather than the way in which they're represented. And so that over-reliance on the signifier at the expense of the signified creates self-referentiality. And what happened with the NFT bubble is that people, including media pundits, focused too much on the way in which NFTs were represented, i.e., as digital assets, rather than what NFTs actually were. And the second ruse is a semantic one. Nietzsche said that concepts are metaphors whose origins we have forgotten. And the same happened with NFTs during the NFT bubble. The concept of NFT was based on a metaphorization that people took at face value, interpreting that metaphor as a concept. And so NFT was only metaphorically a digital asset rather than actually a digital asset. But to the extent to which the media disseminated the idea that that metaphor was actually the literal reality of the NFTs, then people took the metaphor for the concept and ran with that. And that double semiotic and semantic ruse is at the very heart of the NFT bubble. Why is it a ruse? Why is it fallacious? Well, because NFTs are what? Non-fungible tokens. The fact that they are non-fungible means that they are unique. From the fact that they are unique, people surmise that they are scarce. And then from the fact that they are scarce, they interpret or read that they are valuable. And from there, they conclude that NFTs are inherently valuable. But in this process, there is a clear non sequitur. There is a clear logic failure. Which one? The logic failure is from scarcity to value. Scarcity is a necessary condition for value, but not a sufficient one. If we forget this, then we buy into the fallacy that NFTs are inherently valuable, which is behind the entire NFT craze. So if we know how to identify and deconstruct both the semiotic and the semantic ruses on which the NFT bubble was predicated, we are in a much better position to, moving forward, being able to spot the lies that are disseminated in the media and the interests that they serve. Of course, there was an economic background also that we need to understand that accompanied the NFT bubble. For instance, the injection of public money as a result of the pandemic during the NFT craze. That also helped people, aided by that semantic cum semiotic ruse, to invest that disposable income into NFT. So that needs to be taken into account. But without that semantic displacement and that semiotic fallacy, the investment wouldn't have been as large. So that when we discuss economy and economics in general, we ought to take into account critical linguistics, propaganda studies, and cultural studies. And I very much hope that my chapter has demonstrated that to you. Thank you.
Now I would like to invite Senior Director CAS Air Marshal Farooq Habib to deliver the closing remarks for today's event. Please, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum. I'm really excited that Dr. Osman had asked me to deliver these concluding remarks, but I'm also aware that being a non-economic person, I could be booed out if I carry this too far or I take this job very seriously. So I've decided to be very circumspect and restrict myself to a script which I've written. Now, I've spent about 2 years at CAS, and in this period, this is Dr. Chauhan's 4th book, which he has either authored completely, contributed chapters to, or edited. In between these books, he has been chipping in as a matter of routine with numerous opinion articles, conferences, media appearances, and so on. That speaks, of course, volumes of his scholarly efficiency and brilliance. Yet at CAS, you will almost never find him engrossed in an exclusive academic activity in an isolated corner. Chances are that he would be found engaged in quips and light-hearted talks with friends, or quoting a couplet by Dagh Dehlvi, his favorite poet, or discussing the topic of his next op-ed. But surely never revealing the busy scholar and intellectual that resides within him. He certainly knows how to wear his knowledge lightly. And that is a sign of true greatness. I remember on the occasion of his last book launch, some of us had predicted a writer's block for him in the year ahead. Writer's block, as you would know, is the inability to begin or continue writing for reasons other than a lack of basic skill or commitment. In his case, the reason we thought was his engagement. But to the delight of the scholarly world, he has proved us all wrong. In fact, far from being a block in his own words, the presence of his kohani, the word which he has used in his book, has been a source of strength alongside his parents for his intellectual skip in his stride. Now, kohani is a Polish word, and I would leave it to you to see its meaning in the dictionary. So in his case, his engagement probably had acted as a source of motivation for his fertility. As Ghalib had said, कि रुकती है मेरी तबीयत तो होती है रवां और. That means the flow of my creativity, if obstructed, actually it becomes even more intensified. It has in his case. Now, most of Dr. Chauhan's earlier writing were related to public value, which is a term used to describe the value that an organization or the activity contributes to a society. In that sense, his focus has always remained to the ultimate objective of public good. When we, the non-economic director at CAS, finally came to grips with the concept of public value, it seems that Dr. Sman has shifted the goalpost to a new topic, that is non-fungible tokens or NFTs. Again, as an ordinary mortal without much economic wisdom, I may not be able to fully comprehend the extent and intricacies of NFTs in our present and future times. But let me, in very few words, plain words, share with you some of the impressions that I carried while I skimmed through this book in the limited time that I had. First, of course, the idea of writing a book on NFTs, which seems to be picking up momentum as an entity in the financial and investment world, is itself commendable. It is still relatively a new phenomena, especially in our region, and I'm sure it would provide a good opportunity to our youth, especially to benefit from and get a head start. And I'm sure here that Zara, our economic prodigy, would probably the first one to invest in it. Zara? Secondly, I found it very interesting the way Dr. Usman has introduced the very concept of NFTs by discussing three profound terms: uniqueness, value, and scarcity. And then he turns this discussion to the realm of digital world. What is unique is scarce, and what is scarce is valuable, hence the value of NFT. The fact that this debate delves into the concept of philosophy, linguistic, and he is a polyglot, we all know, and religion are testimony to Dr. Chauhan's prowess in all these subjects as well. So here is not merely an economist, but a multidisciplinary guru at his best, guiding the reader to the fundamentals of NFTs. The second point which impressed me was the logical and coherent way in which the book moves along while taking one aspect after the another of the topic. Now, do keep in mind that it is authored by a number of scholars. Ensuring such flow and coherence indeed speaks of great editorial work by Dr. Saab. The book begins by providing the foundational knowledge about the NFTs and then progresses on to provide insights and views of the two camps, that is the pro NFT group and the naysayers or the doubters, in order to enable the reader to form his opinion. I have found mine opinion. You can go through the book to form your own opinion. Most importantly, the multidisciplinary approach that Dr. Chauhan uses in the book is very powerful because it allows a group of leading experts to bring very different perspectives together and give the reader a fuller, more comprehensive understanding of the topic. Another point which the book highlights is the application of emerging technology in financial system. It underscores the importance of awareness amongst all stakeholders in our society about the emerging economic technologies for Pakistan's development. These technologies, and specifically the blockchain, offers what I had called a dashte imkan, a desert of possibilities in addressing some of our perennial problems in the financial system. These include counterfeit, frauds, lack of transparency, tampering of record, etc. In fact, I fear the day when the physical assets or the land also comes within the ambit of NFT, and I'm sure all the land developers in Pakistan would start to have cold sweat. In fact, few weeks back, Dr. Chauhan had also written an op-ed on the idea of using blockchain's technology in conducting elections in Pakistan in order to tackle various inherent weaknesses. The last but not the least takeaway from the book is that given the breakneck speed at which the digital economy is moving, it is important for young Pakistanis to remain abreast and to make contribution to the advancement of these technologies. Finally, I have this question to Dr. Chauhan on behalf of all the directors, and I'm sure all the guests also: how can we invest in the NFTs? Let's have a session on this also sometimes later. So kudos is due for Dr. Chauhan for once again coming up with a brilliant book on a relevant topic. His presence at CAS certainly enhances the value and prestige of this think tank. He embodies the spirit of a true scholar, an untiring author, and an excellent human being. So I would say keep these books coming for Pakistan and at large for the world. We all need them.
Although there has already been a round of applause, but let's close this event with a heartfelt round of applause for Dr. Usman Chauhan and all the authors who have contributed to this remarkable book. Together, they have crafted a work that undoubtedly enriches the existing literature and brings significant value to our collective knowledge. I now kindly request Senior Director CAS Air Marshal Farooq Habib to receive the newly launched book from Dr. Usman. Please, sir. With that, I thank you all for being a part of today's event. Please proceed to the dining hall for refreshments.